Well, good day, everyone. It's great to be with everyone again. I'm Brian Kalish. We'll do little introductions in just a moment. But we have just this wonderful opportunity to share with you today some thoughts, kind of from my perspective, a little bit of it sounds kind of nuts and bolts, but it's some really critical aspects, especially for, from my perspective, as a finance person who, knows a little bit about technology. So that makes me dangerous. And to hear from someone who's actually gone through the process. So it was kind of funny as I was kind of thinking about my discussion with Dave today. We'll do an introduction in a second, which is like, this is kind of like a really conversation that we would have over lunch or dinner or, over adult beverages. And it's like, hey, I'm thinking about this. You've done it. Here's kind of my thoughts about it. So that's really kind of the format that we were thinking about today. But it's great. I mean, today we've got my good friend Dave Sackett with us, who's the vice president, Persimmon Technologies Corporation. Really what we were kind of thinking about. I guess first of all, let me just say, thanks for joining us today, Dave.
Thanks, Brian.
The feedback that we've gotten is, our audience wants to understand how Hyperbots integration helps, faster onboarding. And certainly whenever we say the word of integration, being, red lights, buzzes fly with me because, even if someone came to me and I've had this in my career, it's like, well, it won't cost anything. You're like, yeah, but it's going to cost time. And that's valuable to me. There's other resources to think about. So, I just thought we'd just kind of dive in, unless there's anything you kind of wanted to set to tee things off.
No, I'm just going to say, my background as a VP of finance is the finance side. If, someone in finance is watching this video, pull in your IT guy. We're going to talk about a lot of details that maybe the IT person would have a keen interest in.
Excellent point. So, just jumping into the details, when we think about integration, right, we're talking about how we can leverage the ERPs that we already have. And one of the things that always comes up in the conversations is kind of connections are there, aren't there. So kind of my first question is, which ERPs Hyperbots already have ready-made integrations with?
Yeah, no, excellent way to start. Hyperbots ships pre-built with bi-directional connectors for SAP, S/4HANA, for Oracle NetSuite, for QuickBooks, for Microsoft Dynamics 365, Sage, Enact 300, Deltek CostPoint, and in my case, we've just gone live with Hyperbots and with Epicor Kinetic. So that's another connector. All use the same canonical schema. So once one Copilot is live, the rest of the ride is all in the same pipe, making that connection. And new connectors roll out every quarter. So it's in Hyperbots' best interest to have that connector ready for an ERP system to make that conversion as smooth as possible.
So it kind of sets up the next thought is, how do your copilots work if you don't yet have that connector to the ERP?
So yeah, great question. We lean on a flexible integration toolkit. So if your ERP exposes REST, SOAP, OData, SQL views, or even flat file drops, we snap in an adapter to translate those calls into a Hyperbots event bus. Internally, the Copilot still sees standard, purchase order created or invoice posted events, so that the AI logic stays, untouched and consistent.
So, trying to be a good finance person, when we start thinking about money, does Hyperbots charge extra to integrate with ERPs that aren't already supported? So this is something that's going to have to be built.
Yeah, no, this is beautiful. There's no extra license or consulting fee. Building a connector is baked into the subscription price. The Hyperbots model is a pay per transaction, so it's in everyone's best interest to onboard every ERP as quickly as possible.
Excellent. That makes perfect sense. Still staying under the topic of resources, because it's not just money, there's also time that's involved. So how much additional time is needed when Hyperbots needs to build out a connector? So they're lacking a ready-made product.
Yeah, so in my case, Epicor, this would have been a new connector for Hyperbots. So it usually adds 2 to 4 weeks. Week one maps the APIs with authentication. Week two builds the CRUD calls. CRUD is create, read, update, and delete for those new to the term. Weeks 3 and 4 handle the replay tests and the UAT or user acceptance test sign off. Only very few custom ERPs push the upper end of that range. Many are structured very simply that can be indexed that makes that connection fairly straightforward.
So again, I put in the general topic of how usable is it? So in the sense of how frequently does Hyperbots write data into the ERP?
So by default, copilots post immediately after an AI decision. An improved invoice, a journal entry hits the ledger within minutes. You can throttle it to hourly or end of day batches. If that matches your IT windows, it's just a configuration slider.
So here's one that I was thinking about because I think it's really important for those of us that are coming from the finance side, and why, to your point, you made a great point, is you might want to pull in one of your IT partners, which is, it's always interesting for a finance person to talk about technology. I think you're a little bit better versed than I am, but basically, technically, how does Hyperbots integrate with an ERP?
Yep. The stack has 3 layers: connectors that speak the ERP's native protocol, a schema mapper that normalizes everything into the canonical graph, and an event bus for every copilot subscribes to. So for on-prem ERPs, we drop in a lightweight agent inside the DMZ. So you only need an outbound HTTPS tunnel, so no inbound firewall holes to keep your IT team safe and secure.
And I think, again, that just kind of highlights, like, for the folks that are watching this, want to dive a little bit deeper. Every discipline has its own vernacular. And so it's key. We start talking about these terms, and I'm like always raising my hands. But again, it's the other way too. When we're talking to IT, and they're like, what are you talking about working capital? What does that mean? Like, you keep telling me it's critical. Why? Why? So again, it is a collaborative effort. As you were implementing, how did you see that relationship work between finance and IT?
Yeah, it was very much a team effort. A lot of the connections and access to the sandbox, that was all done through the IT side. Once there was actual, user application questions, then that came to the finance side. So there's almost like behind the scenes and then working the actual product. That's kind of how we divided the finance and IT responsibilities.
Yeah, because I don't know if you would agree or not. I mean, that's kind of the one of the barriers that I see people trying to get over, right? Is that this is typically driven by finance, but there's a lack of expertise. And just because you may not, or this is certainly one person's opinion, just
Yeah.
because I don't understand how star schema works, doesn't mean, that should be a barrier to us to try to advance, to leverage these tremendous tools that are coming out that are really going to help us make better, faster, smarter decisions.
Agreed. And then there's also, yeah, not to forget Hyperbots. They're also very adept at these technologies and how it all works together. So it really is a team approach between, an end customer and Hyperbots to make the integration happen.
Excellent point. Excellent. So again, as we're talking about trying to be, I'm very resource focused. It's like, you know, I think probably anyone who's been around for a little while may have gone through somewhat of a painful integration. I've seen integrations that take 2.5 years. And again, that scares people off. So, how long does a standard integration take?
Yeah, excellent question. Like ERPs, in my experience, I like to draw that, have that take like a year or more is my preference. In Hyperbot's case, for ERPs, the connector is usually 2 to 4 weeks, covering sandbox mapping, user acceptance test replay, and production cutover. So most elapsed time is waiting for customer test windows, and the technical work fits in a single sprint. So we were really quick with our conversion to Hyperbots, and we wanted to move it as fast as possible to start seeing the benefits right away.
So one key point, and again, just for my clarification, because I reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow than today, is we're not talking about a replacement. We're talking about an enhancement, correct?
Correct. Yeah, this is something that kind of bolts onto your ERP that creates an advantage to give you more efficiency. And in my case, I'm using the AP module to automate accounts payable from Hyperbots into Epicor Kinetic.
So I'm kind of taking this from the perspective of, from a customer talking to someone who has the experience. It's like I'm like, okay, these are things that I've been burned by in the past. So the more that I can talk to, and that's, you know, why I think, conversations like this are so important is you may not get the exact answer, but you may get 9 or 10 things not to do and or to key in on. Videos are great, and I think this is a wonderful way of reaching literally the world. But I'm also a believer in, why people should, get out and talk to their network. Like I said, I'm kind of
Mhm.
envisioning this as you and I, having a beer or having lunch and talking about it, and for
Right.
people to leverage other folks in their network to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. People who've gone through it before should be a great resource in terms of reaching out to them to see, what were the challenges, what went really well, what didn't go well, and then set them up for success.
Absolutely. So again, from a resource, consumption, what does Hyperbots need from the company during the implementation phase?
Yep, there's four essential things, and I'll list them out. Your API and service credentials, your sandbox UAT tenant, which is another word for a test database with realistic data, a 90-minute field mapping workshop, and at least one business unit to sign off on the golden sample tests.
Like so many things in life, we live in a world of trust, but verify. So, how do you verify the integration? I mean, maybe it's aspirational, maybe it's not. I'm thinking the word flawless to your exact ERP version. So I don't, again, that's a pretty strong word to use in my world. But do you feel that that it's been, basically, how do you verify and if you think it's an appropriate term that it's flawless?
Yeah, I think it's an appropriate goal. What happens is there's a three-step certification process. Step one is the schema handshake. Step two is the golden sample replay in UAT. And three is a 48-hour shadow run posting to a subledger. Only zero errors and sub 60-second latency will unlock production. So, from a finance person's point of view, uh, you got to make sure the system works, and nothing's going to post without finance really signing off that this transaction was acceptable. That's in the beginning. Over time, there's going to be automation that things will go in automatically to be efficient, but at least during the uh, conversion phase or the startup phase, you really want to watch everything that happens and really do a lot of approvals that you won't need to do in the future.
No, that makes perfect sense. So I'm curious because I know you've just shifted over to a new ERP. So you may have had Hyperbots before, you may not have. So let me know how fair this question is. Is what
Sure.
happens when you migrate to a new ERP, or probably what we deal with much more often is when there's an upgrade, right? Because
Yeah.
that's happening all the time. And again, it sounds kind of quaint, but it's in the cloud now, so it just occurs, right? It's not a project that we're doing, that IT's coming around and doing. So, how have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is even with ERP upgrades, the fundamental workings of the ERP don't change. It's more bolt on top enhancements. But what happens is that Hyperbots connectors are versioned. And during any migration, they activate a dual write mode. And that posts to both ledgers, keeping them in sync. So if you've got your before upgrade version and your after, both are done in sync so that they can be compared. And after that cutover, the old endpoint can be retired with no data loss. No Copilot changes are needed with zero downtime.
Again, I use words like flawless and ensure. So we'll try this one. So, how do you
Yeah.
ensure that right transactions into the ERP are successful?
So yeah, the good news is there's a lot of information that Hyperbots will give to end users. Every post is followed by an immediate readback via the ERP API. The connector compresses each field and to intend the payload, and any mismatch in that posting or the logic triggers an auto retry with exponential backoff and alerts in the integration exceptions queue. Nothing reaches the GL unverified. So especially now, like as we're going through the Hyperbots system, things will stop. Be an exception that a human has to go in and say, okay, why did this fail? How do we fix this? How do we fix it? So going forward, it just goes in naturally. So there's a lot. That's kind of the bot training, the bot understanding your invoice types and how data's in there. And so it's a constant learning and teaching opportunity for both Hyperbots and for customers.
Right. And the other thing that I would add too, I mean, and this is, the power again with Hyperbots, but agentic AI in general is that, when I learn something, if I'm working for you, Dave, and I learn something,
Mm-hmm.
I've learned it. But when
Right.
you're using a system like this, the entire system learns at the same time. And you just think that's not linear growth, that's exponential growth. And
Right.
as we're just operating in this world that, high VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, the ability to leverage AI, leverage tools like Hyperbots is really to move activities off the plates of our finance team so that they can spend much more of their time doing higher level analytics. Again, that's
Absolutely.
kind of tossing that to you,
Yeah.
kind of wrapping up here, but just your thoughts on that.
No, it is, and it's one reason why we went with Hyperbots is that we're doing pay per transaction. So as our volume increases, which we're predicting, we're not going to have to hire more people to do data entry. It's like the bot is going to be able to handle it, and the training that we do now. Once we train a bot to accept an invoice properly, then all the future invoices are going to go in seamlessly. So the front end work that we're doing now is going to save us time down the line when, at least in my case, we're expecting much higher volumes. And without now hiring more people, it's just going to be the bot can now just handle more, which from an ROI point of view, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I don't want to have to hire, data entry people, data entry people, data entry people. If my business is growing, I'd rather have that function be offloaded to a bot that can work 24/7, that can be super accurate, no transposition errors, and have good audit trails. Like there's so much that, using AI, using a service like this can really set you up not only for today's efficiencies and cost savings, but also into the future and have an even bigger impact down the line.
Absolutely. And it's a collaborative. I mean, again, people having to understand that there's things that AI does tremendously and does better than humans, but the
Mm-hmm.
human element isn't going to go away. And so I've may have shared this comment with you before, Dave, or not. I understand not everyone makes the journey, so this is a broad statement, but it's like, AI isn't going to replace people. People that use AI are going to replace those that don't.
Agreed. Yeah, we know the future is not going to be pure AI. It's going to be people leveraging AI as a tool to be more efficient and to really set themselves up for the future. So it's really getting people on board, getting people comfortable using AI. I'm an early adopter of AI. I've seen, my prediction of the future. It's going to be critical to learn how to play nice with AI in the finance function.
Oh, absolutely. And we're still, obviously we're moving up the curve, but I think that's why, the fact that Hyperbots, started from a finance view, like trying to solve problems rather than let's create AI and that it can do things and then try to figure out how that works. The idea of talking to CFOs, understanding what the problem points they have, what they want to basically AI away and build it that way. I think that's why, in my humble opinion, why Hyperbots has been so successful.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially the focus on finance and solving finance problems. Um, for me, AP is one, but I'm going to have cash flow that I want AI for. I'm going to have accounts receivable collections. I'm going to have purchasing. I'm going to have all these different needs for AI in the future, and I'm planning to rely on Hyperbots.
Great. Well, Dave, and thank you for your time today. To the audience, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to, if I may say, feel free to reach out to Dave or myself, or certainly the folks at Hyperbots if you want to learn more. Like I said, it's a tool that can help you, become much more efficient, much more effective. As Dave was pointing out, has a very attractive ROI. And again, it is the future. It's the future today. We're not talking about science fiction. Like I said, you've got folks, pretty what I would consider more cutting edge folks like Dave who are actually implementing it today. So it's not something that's going to be coming down the pike. We have it today.
I just agree with that's very good points to add.
Great. Well, everyone be well. Look forward to seeing everyone on a future cast, and be well and be safe. Thank you.